Fake HOA harassed my son. He's the youngest cadet at Police Academy. Part 1. Chapter 1. A new chapter. Moving day felt like hope. After years of scrimping, saving, and sacrificing, I'd finally put down the deposit for a house in Northfield Oaks, a suburban neighborhood just outside the city, lined with neat sidewalks, tidy lawns, and the smell of fresh mulch and new beginnings. It wasn't a mansion, but it had a backyard, 2 bedrooms, and a driveway wide enough for my old Toyota and my son's beat-up Crown Vic, which he'd been fixing up on weekends from junkyard parts. My son, Jace, was the reason we were here. At just 17, he had done what most people twice his age couldn't, earned a provisional spot in the city's Cadet Police Academy program. He was the youngest ever accepted, the first black cadet in its early admission tier. His dream was to wear the badge not just with pride, but with purpose, and I couldn't have been prouder. But none of that mattered to Karen. Chapter 2. Meet the fake HOA. It started with a knock. Not even 24 hours after we moved in, as we were unpacking kitchen boxes, the doorbell rang. I wiped sweat off my brow and opened it with a tired smile. There she was, mid-50s, frosted bob haircut, mirrored sunglasses, clipboard clutched in one manicured hand. She wore a navy polo with a stitched emblem that read, Northfield Oaks HOA Enforcement. Spoiler alert, there is no official HOA. Good afternoon, she said curtly. Are you the new resident? Yes, just moved in yesterday, I replied. She didn't smile, just looked me up and down. I'm Karen Withers. I run community compliance. There are a few things we need to discuss. I blinked. Is this about the garbage bins? She sniffed. That, and the condition of the vehicle parked in your driveway. The black one. It doesn't look registered, and frankly, it's unsightly. I looked past her at my son's car. Sure, it wasn't pretty, but it ran. That's my son's, I said calmly. He's a cadet at the city academy. She raised an eyebrow, like I'd said he was training to be a pirate. Well, cadet or not, it brings down the aesthetic value of the neighborhood, as does letting people work on cars in public view. She handed me a yellow slip with the words First Notice, Violation of Neighborhood Standards. I didn't argue, not yet, because sometimes you pick your battles. Sometimes you wait. Chapter 3. The First Warning. That weekend, Jace got up early, pulled his academy prep manual from under his pillow, and started his daily conditioning routine. Running, push-ups, sit-ups. Every move, timed to regulation. He did it on the lawn because we didn't have a home gym yet. At 7:23 a.m., Karen called the non-emergency line, claimed a suspicious young man was performing unusual military-style drills on her street. The responding officer was polite, even embarrassed, when he knocked on our door. Sorry, ma'am, he said. Protocol. I called Jace inside. He stood tall, sweat glistening on his forehead, wearing his academy-issued t-shirt. Sir, he said with confidence, do you need identification? The officer chuckled. No, son. Keep training. Just maybe move it to the backyard. Karen watched the whole exchange from her porch, arms crossed, triumphant. Chapter 4. A pattern forms. The yellow slips kept coming. Improper trash bin alignment. Failure to display American flag on national holiday. Lawn overgrowth. The grass was 3 inches. Unapproved activity. Suspicious guests seen entering home. It was my cousin dropping off groceries. She never signed them, just left them folded and taped to our door, or worse, on the windshield of Jace's car. He kept his head down. He never complained. Until one day I found him sitting on the back steps, staring at his shoes. Mom, he said softly, I wear the same uniform as her son wore when he got into the force. Why do I feel like a criminal every time I step outside? I had no words, only rage and resolve. Chapter 5. The Town App Post. Then came the post. On the community app Neighborhood Watch and Wellness, Northfield Oaks, someone posted under the name Concerned, Neighbor 55, new residents at 1128. Cedar Lane don't seem to follow protocol. Young male often loiters in the front yard, possibly casing other homes. Black car with tinted windows appears frequently. Just something to be aware of. Stay safe, neighbors. It exploded. Some neighbors echoed the fear. Others asked for proof. And one brave soul commented, That kid is in the police academy. He's not a threat. He's the future. But the damage was done. Even the post being deleted didn't erase the whispers. Chapter 6. My breaking point. One morning, as I backed out of the driveway to head to work, I saw something that made me slam the brakes. Spray painted across our mailbox in crude red letters. Not one of us. I couldn't breathe. Jace hadn't seen it yet. I scrubbed it off before he woke up. But I didn't scrub the truth. I took photos, I printed them, and I started making calls. Chapter 7. The Academy, steps in the Academy director, Lieutenant Ava Morales, was a towering woman of quiet power. She'd come from nothing. She didn't tolerate nonsense. And she believed in her cadets. When she heard what was happening, she came to our house. She walked up to our front door in full uniform, with her lieutenant badge shining like armor. Karen was on her porch. I opened the door, stunned. She looked me in the eye and said, "May I speak with Jace?" He came out, wide-eyed. She snapped into a salute. "Cadet Jace Martin, on behalf of the City Police Training Academy, I apologize that your commitment to service has been met with anything less than respect." Then she turned to Karen. "You will no longer interfere with his training. If you do, you'll be dealing with me. And trust me, our code of conduct reaches far beyond the street." Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Part 2. Chapter 1. After Lieutenant Morales' visit, Karen went silent, but not for long. 2 weeks later, Jace came home with his shoulders tense and his face stiff. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed me his phone. A video was circulating on a private Facebook group for Northfield Oaks residents. Karen had uploaded grainy footage from her doorbell cam of Jace working out again on our front lawn. The caption? "Unidentified individual performing strange, aggressive exercises in public view. This is a peaceful neighborhood. Children live here." The comments underneath weren't much better. Why is he always in training clothes? Why not go to a gym like normal people? Looks like he's casing the block. No one used his name, but everyone knew who it was. Chapter 2. I didn't cry, not in front of Jace. But that night, once he went to bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what kind of world punishes a kid for being disciplined, determined, and, yes, black. I wanted to scream, but instead I did what I knew best. I documented. I called Rebecca Chang, a civil rights attorney I'd met through my work. She listened quietly, then said, "I've seen this before. Let me help you build the file." I didn't want to sue yet. I just wanted to protect my son. Chapter 3. The Academy hosted a community open house that month. Cadets were encouraged to bring guests, demonstrate drills, and speak with local leaders. Jace was chosen to represent his squad, partly because of his scores, partly because of his story. When his turn came, he stood before a room of city council members, officers, and local residents. "My name is Jace Martin," he began, "and I want to be a police officer to protect people. But lately I've been treated like I'm the one people need protection from." He held up a printed copy of Karen's Facebook post. "This is me. This is my street. This is what I do to serve. And this fear, it's not who we are, or at least not who we should be." Silence, then thunderous applause. Even the mayor stood up. Karen wasn't in the room, but the city heard it loud and clear. Chapter 4. A reporter named Ella Vasquez from Channel 7 News reached out the next day. She had seen the open house video and asked if she could do a segment on Jace. We hesitated, but Jace said, "If people are going to talk about me, let them at least hear the truth." So we agreed. The segment aired that Sunday night. Cadet targeted in suburban neighborhood, but he's not backing down. They showed Jace running drills. They showed the mailbox graffiti. They showed Karen's clips, blurring her name, but not her intentions. It went viral in 48 hours. The phone started ringing. Some calls were supportive. Others weren't. Chapter 5. 3 days later, someone egged our house. It was 2 a.m. Jace and I were both home. We heard the sound, quick, wet thuds. We ran outside. Dozens of eggs splattered across the siding and the driveway. And in the middle of the lawn, a sign stuck into the ground. "Cadets don't belong here. Stick to the city." I froze. Jace didn't. He walked over, ripped the sign out of the ground, and snapped it in two. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Mom, I'm not running. I'm not quitting. And I'm not staying quiet." That's when I knew. This wasn't just his test. It was mine too. Chapter 6. Karen didn't go quiet. Instead, she doubled down. A new flyer began showing up around the neighborhood. Slipped into mailboxes, pinned to trees, taped to trash bins. The headline in bold, "Are We Safe?" How the city's youth police program is experimenting in our neighborhood without consent. She framed it as an informational alert, using phrases like unvetted cadet drills and unauthorized training exercises near children. Then came the question, should someone with access to tactical gear be living without supervision among families? There was no name, no photo, but there didn't need to be. Everyone knew who it was about. Chapter 7. In response to the flyer, the Northfield Oaks Civic Committee held an emergency town hall. It was supposed to be civil. It wasn't. Karen showed up first, sitting in the front row with her clipboard and 3 printed folders labeled incident reports. I sat with Jace near the back. Rebecca, our lawyer friend, came too. The meeting began with the chair, Mr. Walden, trying to calm the room. "We're not here to attack each other. We're here to discuss the concerns raised." Karen cut him off. "The safety concerns." Her voice was sharp, pointed. "This isn't about race. This isn't about ambition. This is about a minor performing tactical routines within 30 feet of school-age children." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then Jay stood up. "I'm that minor," he said, his voice steady, "and I'm not performing tactics. I'm following a fitness routine approved by the City Cadet program. I've passed background checks. I've trained beside officers. I've already been commended for my character." He looked around the room. "And let's be honest, this wouldn't be happening if I looked different. If my shirt said CrossFit instead of Cadet." The room went still. Karen opened her mouth, but the committee chair held up a hand. "Enough. This meeting is for solutions, not slander." Chapter 8. The town meeting didn't end the fight. It magnified it. Soon the neighborhood app was boiling over with posts. Some defended Jace. Others questioned the cadet program, questioned our presence, questioned our motives. Someone even posted an altered image of Jace in uniform with a fake quote underneath, "I don't owe this neighborhood anything." It was fake. It was vile. But it got likes. That night I turned off my phone for the first time in years. Chapter 9. But not everyone turned on us. Todd, an ex-firefighter who lived 3 houses down, came by with a box of barbecue and a folded lawn chair. He said, "I've seen a lot in my time, but a kid working his tail off and still getting treated like a threat? Nah, not on my street." The Khans from across the block sent over baklava and a note. "Our son wants to join the cadets now. He says your boy's brave." Even Mr. Walden, the civic committee chair, stopped by. "I know what Karen is doing. She tried something similar 5 years ago. You're not alone." It wasn't a parade, but it was a start. Chapter 10. The city couldn't ignore the situation any longer. The mayor's office issued a formal statement. "We are aware of the targeted harassment against a young cadet in the Northfield Oaks neighborhood. We stand firmly in support of our youth training program and its participants." They even featured Jace in a PSA video titled, "This is what future officers look like." In the video, Jace spoke directly to the camera. "You can train your body to be strong, but standing up for what's right, that's how you train your character." It aired on 3 local stations. Karen lost her mind. She called the station, demanding a retraction. They didn't return her call. Chapter 11. With everything slipping, Karen made a desperate move. She filed a civil complaint, accusing Jace of creating a hostile neighborhood environment, operating as an agent of the state without authorization, and, get this, training for militarized disruption. It was baseless, laughable, but the court couldn't just ignore it. We had to respond, and that meant we'd be going public, with everything. Chapter 12. Rebecca called me late one night. "I've reviewed the footage, the flyers, the app posts. We're filing a counterclaim, not just for harassment, but for racial targeting, emotional distress, and reputational harm." I hesitated. "Will it escalate things too far?" She paused. Sometimes the only way to stop a fire is to shine a spotlight on it. And that's what we did. We gathered testimonies from neighbors, from academy officials, even from students Jace had mentored at the YMCA. Karen wasn't just facing a hearing anymore. She was facing reckoning. Chapter 13. The City Magistrate Court announced a hearing date, Karen v. Martin, scheduled for July 7th. It was supposed to be a small claims dispute, just another complaint in a long list of civic noise. But as the story gained traction in the press and online, the hearing exploded into something more. Channel 7 ran a follow-up segment, Fake HOA Strikes Again, Cadet Harassment Lawsuit Sparks National Attention. The story was picked up by national news outlets. People reposted screenshots of Karen's flyers and footage from the town meeting. Hashtags trended. Quinnerers stand with Cadet, Jace, Chionanon, fake, ho real. Hate the city was watching. But more than that, the country was. Chapter 14. 2 days before the hearing, Jace received a surprise visit during training. The entire cadet class, led by Lieutenant Morales, marched to our house in full uniform. Not military drill, but quiet, formal respect. They presented Jace with a plaque. For excellence in character, courage under fire, and embodying the spirit of service. Jace's hands shook as he accepted it. Lieutenant Morales saluted him. "We don't just train officers," she said. "We train leaders. And you, Cadet Martin, are already one." Chapter 15. On the eve of the hearing, Karen made one last desperate move. A flyer slid into every mailbox on the block. "We must take back our neighborhood before it's taken from us. The cadet is not just a symbol. He's the start of something bigger. Are you comfortable with what's coming?" It was vague enough to avoid legal defamation, but specific enough to spark fury. Dozens of neighbors marched to her house that evening, not with torches, but with lawn signs. "We stand with Jace. Integrity is welcome here. No room for fear." They planted them in every yard from Oak Lane to Sycamore Bend. Karen didn't come outside. Chapter 16. The courtroom was packed. People filled every row, and a line stretched out the courthouse door. Media vans parked along the sidewalk. Protesters and supporters faced off in silence outside, separated by metal barriers. Karen entered with a high-priced attorney at her side. We entered with Rebecca. Jace wore his cadet uniform, polished boots, crisp collar, and the plaque medal pinned to his chest. The judge, a composed woman named Judge Darby, began the proceedings with firm tone. "We are not here to weigh opinions. We are here to examine evidence, determine legal standing, and deliver truth." Karen's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, this is a case about safety, about community members feeling uncomfortable with militarized presence. My client only seeks to preserve peace." Rebecca stood slowly. "This is a case about power, abused, about racism veiled in regulation, about a young man being targeted for nothing more than his ambition and his skin." Chapter 17. Rebecca presented our documentation, screenshots of Karen's anonymous posts, flyers with coded language, video of her delivering fake notices, the "Not One of Us" graffiti, testimonies from neighbors and cadets, then the kicker, footage from the YMCA, where Jace volunteered weekly, mentoring younger kids on discipline and community leadership. In the video, a boy says, "I want to be like Jace. He makes me feel safe." The courtroom went silent. Karen's lawyer scrambled to object. Judge Darby overruled. "Let the jury of public opinion hear the truth." Chapter 18. Then came Karen's testimony. She took the stand in a beige suit in a trembling voice. "I was just trying to keep things the way they were. I've lived in Northfield Oaks for 23 years. This place used to feel peaceful. And then, things changed." Rebecca stood. "Things or people?" Karen faltered. "I didn't mean anything racial." "Then what did you mean?" Karen hesitated, then muttered, "Some people just don't fit the neighborhood." Gasps rippled through the room. Judge Darby raised an eyebrow. "No further questions," Rebecca said coldly. Chapter 19. The judge didn't need long. She returned from chambers with a face carved in steel. "This court finds that the complaint filed by Karen Witherspoon has no legal basis and is grounded in personal bias. Then she turned to Karen. Furthermore, this court refers your conduct for review under the state's anti-harassment and neighborhood fraud statutes. The room erupted. Cheers, tears, applause. Karen sat frozen, her world unraveling. Chapter 20. As the courtroom cleared, Jace walked up to the judge's bench, his hands shaking. Judge Darby leaned forward. "You remind me of my brother," she said softly. "He was the first black trooper in our county. He faced worse, but he kept showing up. And that's what you did." Jace nodded, his voice steady. "I'll keep showing up, ma'am, for people who can't." Part 3. Chapter 1. The courtroom decision didn't erase the damage, but it shifted the tide. Karen had lost, publicly, legally, and perhaps most importantly, morally. Neighbors who once ignored her flyers now rolled their eyes. People who used to wave politely from across the street crossed to greet us with warmth. The silence that once wrapped our house like barbed wire had been broken. But the tension wasn't fully gone, because some wounds don't bleed where people can see, and Jace, for all his poise and medals, wasn't untouched. Chapter 2. He didn't say much the first week after the hearing. Trained, studied, ate, slept. But one evening I found him sitting alone on the porch. He was staring at the darkened house across the street, Karen's house. Its windows were shut, curtains drawn. "I keep thinking," he said without looking at me, "about how I almost believed her." "Believed what?" "That I was the problem." I sat beside him, fighting the lump in my throat. "She saw your power and called it a threat," I said. "But that doesn't make it true. That makes it dangerous, to her, not to you." He looked down. "Do you think she meant to be evil?" I paused. "No. But that's the scariest part. I think she thought she was right." Chapter 3. The next morning we got a letter in the mail, hand-signed by the governor. "Dear Cadet Martin, your commitment to service in the face of adversity speaks not only to your character, but to the hope we hold for the next generation of leadership. Please accept my personal invitation to speak at the upcoming State Youth Leadership Forum as an honored guest. You are the future of this state's public service, and you have already proven yourself worthy." Jace stood frozen, reading it twice. "Mom," he whispered, "they see me." I pulled him into a hug. They always did. Now the whole world does too. Chapter 4. 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up in front of Karen's house. No goodbye, no apology, just cardboard boxes and silence. She left before dawn the next day. The neighborhood felt lighter, but something about it felt unfinished. Chapter 5. One morning, an envelope was taped to our door. No name. Inside, a single page. Typed. "I won't ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know. I believed the things I said. Until the court forced me to listen to the things I refused to see, I was afraid of change, of being irrelevant. But you didn't fight me with anger. You showed up with strength. And I hope, truly hope, you become the kind of officer this country needs. K." Jace read it. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer next to his acceptance letter. "I don't need her to like me," he said. "I just need people like her to learn." Chapter 6. The story kept growing. Major outlets picked it up. The Washington Post, NBC, even a feature on Good Morning America. Jace was now a symbol, not a victim, not even just a cadet. He became the face of the fight against suburban prejudice. He got emails from young men across the country. "Bro, I saw you on YouTube. My HOA tried to ban my cousin for wearing his firefighter gear. We got your back. I'm 16 and I'm joining the junior sheriff program now. Because of you." One message hit us both hardest. "I'm 14. My school counselor said I'd never be cop material. Now I keep your speech on my wall." Chapter 7. The State Youth Leadership Forum was held at the Capitol in front of 600 students, city officials, and press. Jace walked to the podium in full cadet dress. A hush fell over the room. He didn't speak from a script. He spoke from his scars. You don't become strong by being feared. You become strong when you protect those who've been silenced. I was called a threat on my own lawn, but I stood firm, not because I wasn't scared, but because I believed that my presence, my voice, deserved the same respect as anyone else. And now I fight to make sure others never have to earn that respect the hard way." The room rose, a standing ovation. The governor hugged him. Jace became the youngest recipient of the State Youth Integrity Medal. Chapter 8. After Jace's speech at the Capitol, the story went beyond headlines. It became a conversation. CNN ran a full segment, "The Cadet Who Faced the Suburbs and Won." NPR did a profile titled, "Beyond the Badge, A Teen's Journey Through Bias and Belief." TikTok blew up with videos of teens sharing their own experiences. One clip from a girl in Illinois went viral. "My neighbor told me my black brother looked suspicious taking out the trash. I showed her the Jace video. She cried. It's not a revolution, it's a revelation." Suddenly, Jace was being interviewed by college panels, civil rights groups, and even a few law enforcement reform initiatives. But through it all, he stayed grounded. Still trained every morning, still helped with groceries, still just Jace. Chapter 9. Jace was invited to speak at a law enforcement reform summit in D.C. On the panel with him, a federal judge, a police union president, and a former DOJ civil rights prosecutor. The moderator asked Jace, "What would you say to a neighborhood like Northfield Oaks before everything happened?" He thought for a moment, then said, "If your idea of safety is tied to who someone looks like and not what they stand for, you're not protecting your neighborhood. You're just protecting your comfort zone." Even the union president nodded. Chapter 10. While the world looked at Jace, our neighborhood quietly began to transform. The Civic Committee created a new inclusion charter, drafted by a diverse group of residents. It included an anti-discrimination clause, a community support line, a Know Your Rights flyer distributed quarterly, monthly diversity potlucks at the park. Todd's idea, obviously. One Saturday, Jace and I joined the potluck. Kids ran through sprinklers. The cons served samosas. Yvonne brought sweet tea. Todd manned the grill. Someone handed Jace a microphone. He looked nervous, but took it. "I used to feel like I didn't belong on this street," he said. "Now I feel like this street belongs to all of us." That night, someone painted a mural on the park wall, "From Targeted to Trusted, Cadet Jace Martin." Chapter 11. One morning, an email arrived from the chief of police in a major East Coast city. "Jace, I've been watching your story. So have my officers. I'd like you to know that you've changed the way we talk about recruitment. Not just who we let in, but how we support them once they're in." One of my own sergeants said, "I wish I had someone like that when I was 17. Keep doing what you're doing. You've got brass in your heart, son." Jace stared at the screen for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe I'll apply to work for him one day." Chapter 12. Then came a call from his fourth grade teacher, Ms. Barnes. "I knew you were special," she said. "Even back then. You were the only kid who asked why the fire drill plan didn't include wheelchair kids." She paused. "I teach a unit on modern heroes now. You're in it." Chapter 13. Other neighborhoods began auditing their HOA behavior. One HOA in Arizona was sued for discriminatory enforcement practices. A group in Colorado voted to dissolve their HOA completely after a local veteran was fined for flying a military branch flag. A school in Georgia named a Civic Leadership Award after Jace. Everywhere, people were talking, not just about the injustice, but about how it changed them. Chapter 14. Then came the call that made Jace pause the longest. The City Cadet program offered him early placement into officer candidacy, a rare, prestigious offer. But he hesitated. "I want to serve," he said, "but I don't just want to patrol. I want to build something better." That week, he applied to college, double major in criminal justice and public policy. Because policing, he said, isn't just what happens on the streets. It's what's written into the rules. Chapter 15. 3 months later, Northfield Oaks hosted a Unity in Service event. At the park entrance, a plaque was unveiled in honor of Cadet Jace Martin, who taught us that strength is quiet, that honor is earned, and that courage is contagious. Jace didn't know they were going to do it. He just stood there, mouth open, eyes full. I wrapped my arm around his shoulder. "You ready for what's next?" He smiled through tears. "Always." Chapter 16. A month after the community plaque was unveiled, a sealed envelope arrived at our door. From the Department of Justice. Jace was formally invited to join a roundtable in Washington, D.C., with federal leaders, youth advocates, and law enforcement commanders from across the country. Topic: Trust and Transformation, Rebuilding Bridges Between Youth and Authority. Jace read the letter twice, then looked at me eyes wide. They want me at the table. I smiled. They don't want you at the table because you're a cadet. They want you there because you refused to be quiet when it was easier. Chapter 17. The night before we left for Washington, Jace sat at the dining table writing notes. He wasn't trying to be perfect. He was trying to be real. "I'm not just speaking for me," he said. "I'm speaking for every kid who got followed around a store, every teen who got reported for jogging, every cadet who didn't get the benefit of the doubt." He paused. "Mom, what if they don't want to change?" I put my hand over his. "Then you make them uncomfortable, and you make them listen anyway." Chapter 18. The round table was held inside a wood-paneled room at DOJ headquarters. Jace sat at a curved table across from people with decades of power: commissioners, legal experts, politicians, and senior officers. He was the youngest in the room by at least 20 years. They discussed policies, recruitment, reforms. Then the moderator turned to Jace. "What do you think the system gets wrong?" Jace took a deep breath. "Too often, you treat the badge like a reward, not a responsibility. You train us to follow the rules, but you forget that sometimes the rules are the problem. You ask us to serve communities that don't trust us without asking why that trust was broken." Silence. He continued. "If my neighborhood saw me as a threat before I ever wore a badge, whose fault is that? Mine or yours?" The room sat still, and then something rare happened. A chief from a major city leaned forward and said, "You're right, and we haven't done enough to earn that trust back." Chapter 19. Later, during a private coffee break, one of the officers approached Jace. He was tall, white, and wore 4 stars on his collar. "Cadet Martin," he said, "I used to think kids like you didn't want the job, that maybe they didn't belong." Jace didn't flinch. "And now?" The officer nodded. "Now I think kids like you might be the only ones who can save it." Chapter 20. When we returned from D.C., there was a mural waiting on our garage door, painted by local art students. It showed Jace, arms crossed, head high, in cadet uniform. Behind him were images of unity. Neighbors of all races, hands reaching across fences, a community once divided now standing as one. In the corner, small but powerful, "This is what courage looks like." Jace stood in front of it for a long time. He whispered, "It's not just my story anymore." And he was right. Chapter 21. Months passed before we heard her name again. Then out of nowhere, I received a certified letter from Karen. It was an official public statement of apology, submitted to the Civic Committee and reprinted in the neighborhood newsletter. I acknowledge that my actions were rooted in fear and bias, and that I caused harm to a young man whose only crime was dedication. I have begun attending bias training sessions and working with a community restorative justice group. I cannot undo what I did, but I will no longer hide from it. I ask for no forgiveness, only a chance to make something better. I let Jace read it. He didn't say anything at first, but later that night he asked, "Do you believe her?" I replied, "I believe she finally saw herself, and that's the first step." Chapter 22. Across the country, departments began shifting cadet policies. Some added cultural training. Others launched mentorship programs, pairing officers with students from marginalized backgrounds. Several cities passed Jace Martin cadet protections, regulations banning community harassment of official youth service members, and setting guidelines for neighborhood accountability. One state senator even proposed a bill called Cadet Justice and Equity Reform Act. Jace was asked to testify. He did. Calm, clear, determined. "I don't want to be the exception," he said. "I want to be the start of something normal." Chapter 23. One morning, just as the sun was breaking through our kitchen blinds, the phone rang. It was the mayor. She spoke directly to Jace. "We're establishing a new youth law and leadership council, and we want you to chair it." Jace paused. "I'm not even out of the cadet program yet." The mayor laughed. "Exactly. We don't want someone who's been in the system for 20 years. We want someone who changed it, without even wearing a full badge yet." Chapter 24. By fall, the council was launched. Jace stood in front of 12 other youth leaders, each from different neighborhoods, different struggles, but united by one thing, a belief that service wasn't about uniforms, but about voice. They tackled real policies, ride-along accountability, cadet mentoring expansion, community de-escalation projects. And for once, the system didn't just invite them to the table, it listened. Jace didn't lecture. He asked questions. He made space, because he knew what it felt like when nobody made space for you. Chapter 25. A documentary team followed Jace for 3 weeks. At the end of filming, they asked him one final question. If you could go back to the moment the fake HOA first targeted you, would you change anything? Jace thought hard, then said, I'd change her heart sooner, not so she'd stop hurting me, but so she'd stop hurting herself by carrying all that fear. The interviewer went quiet, and so did I, watching from the doorway. Because that wasn't the answer of a cadet. That was the answer of a leader. Chapter 26. 2 years later, a new public charter school opened on the outskirts of the city. Its name? The Jace Martin Academy for Public Leadership and Service. Jace was invited to cut the ribbon. He didn't make a speech that day. Instead, he handed the mic to a 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair who had just been elected student council president. Because Jace never wanted the spotlight, he just wanted to make sure it reached the right people. Chapter 27. On the anniversary of that first violation notice Karen had ever posted, Jace and I went for a walk. Same street, same sidewalks, different energy. People waved, kids shouted, "Hi, Officer Jace." A neighbor handed us lemonade. And as we reached our driveway, Jace stopped and looked at the mailbox. New paint, new plaque. But in his eyes, I saw him reliving the old message that once read, "Not one of us." He turned to me and said softly, "Now I know. I was never supposed to fit into their version of us. I was supposed to redefine it." Chapter 28. That night, Jace pulled an old envelope from his drawer. Karen's apology. He placed it next to his academy plaque, state medal, and a framed photo of the neighborhood's mural. Then he whispered, "I forgive her, not because she asked, but because I refused to carry what she tried to put on me." And in that moment, I knew. He had become the kind of man I always prayed he would. Chapter 29. Jace graduated from the police academy with highest honors. But instead of going straight into patrol, he accepted a dual role. Community Outreach Captain, Liaison to Youth and Civil Reform Task Force. His badge wasn't just metal, it was memory. It was resilience. It was every scar shaped into strength. And wherever he walked, from schools to city halls to Capitol steps, he carried not just authority, but trust. Chapter 30. Years from now, when people tell the story of the cadet who stood his ground on a suburban lawn, when they recount the flyers, the courtroom, the protest signs, the mural, I hope they also remember this. He didn't just survive the storm, he rewrote the sky and left it wide open for others to rise. Part 4. Chapter 1. Summer in Northfield Oaks was no longer a season of silent fences and fake violations. Now it was block parties, sidewalk chalk, and kids laughing as sprinklers arched across open lawns. The HOA signs Karen once taped to mailboxes had long been replaced by hand-painted tiles made by neighborhood kids that read, "Unity lives here." Jace walked the streets not as a cadet under suspicion, but as a young man deeply respected. He was no longer shadowed. He was celebrated. Even the city posted a new sign at the entrance to the neighborhood. "Welcome to Northfield Oaks, home of future leaders." Chapter 2. We finally had family dinners again without tension. No doorbell interruptions, no egging, just grilled chicken, laughter, and Jace recounting his council meetings with city officials. Sometimes he spoke with fire, sometimes with humility, always with clarity. He was growing, not just taller, not just wiser, but deeper. Calmer. Chapter 3. We heard whispers, then confirmation. Karen had joined a restorative justice group in Boise. She didn't just attend the meetings, she spoke. A reporter wrote a piece, "From Enforcer to Listener, the Redemption of a Neighborhood Watchdog." In it, Karen admitted, "I thought I was protecting something, but I didn't realize I was also destroying something else." She now worked with community organizers to build trust programs across gated communities. Jace read the article quietly, then said, "Good. She's using her clipboard for something real." Chapter 4. Jace graduated the academy with a dual distinction in public service and civic engagement. But instead of becoming a patrol officer, he accepted a new position, statewide youth outreach ambassador. He would visit schools, speak with at-risk teens, develop peer leadership training, help build the next generation of protectors with compassion and strength. "I'm not here to chase criminals," he said once. "I'm here to prevent people from becoming them." Chapter 5. On the first anniversary of the court hearing, Northfield Oaks held its first Unity March. There were no protests, no shouting, just neighbors walking together. Jace led the front beside the mayor, two kids holding his hands. Onlookers held signs like, "We see you, Jace. Lead us forward. Fear ends here." That night, a lantern ceremony lit up the neighborhood sky. One lantern had a single message: "Thank you for changing the story." Chapter 6. A new civics classroom was named after Jace at the local high school. His story became part of the curriculum under a unit called Community, Courage, and the Constitution. I visited the class one afternoon as a guest. A young girl raised her hand. "Was it hard being his mom?" I smiled. "It was harder watching him hurt, but it was the greatest honor watching him rise." Section 2 of 2, 5,000 words. Chapter 7. Jace launched a new initiative through his role as youth ambassador, the Shield Start program. It connected teens from underserved communities with internships in law enforcement, public safety, and legal advocacy. He partnered with local precincts, fire departments, and civil rights attorneys. The goal wasn't just to recruit future officers, it was to rebuild trust before uniforms ever entered the picture. "You can't change the system if you're never invited into the room," he told a group of students at the launch. Chapter 8. One afternoon, Jace received a handwritten letter from a boy named Miguel in Laredo, Texas. "I saw you on TV. A lady said you were a hero. I want to be a cadet like you, but my big brother says people like us don't get to be the good guys. But you did, so maybe I can too." Jace pinned that letter above his desk. It stayed there every day. Chapter 9. Local artists unveiled a new mural downtown, a towering piece showing Jace not alone, but surrounded by kids of all backgrounds, walking forward beneath a banner that read, "Protect, Empower, Uplift." It wasn't just art, it was a vow. Chapter 10. When Jace officially received his first badge as an officer, he didn't throw a celebration. He hosted a panel. The topic: Justice starts in your own neighborhood. He brought in other cadets who had overcome bias, a trauma counselor, a civil rights historian, and yes, even Karen, who now worked with a nonprofit combating fear-based discrimination. When she stood to speak, she looked out at the crowd and said, "I came here today because I don't want my legacy to be a warning. I want it to be a turning point." And that started with Jace. Chapter 11. One evening, we took a photo on our front porch. Jace in uniform, me in tears, and neighbors behind us, smiling. The same porch where everything once began in fear, now captured hope. Chapter 12. Years from now, when someone drives past the sign that says, "Welcome to Northfield Oaks," they won't remember Karen's flyers or the false citations. They'll remember the cadet who kept standing, the mother who never stopped believing, and the neighborhood that learned to grow. Because some stories don't end in courtrooms. They end in classrooms, in murals, in children who dream of badges not as weapons, but as promises. And Jace? He never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to serve with honor. And he did. The end.